Dear students, how are you? You know the present situation. Our country is going through a difficult stage. Our country is combating with a deadly disease named COVID-19 or coronavirus. And we all are fighting to combat this disease. And that is why our every plan, our every program, our every situation, it has changed. Your school, it is closed for unlimited time being, and we, the teachers, cannot meet you in this situation, but still, staying home, you can do progress in your studies. And that is why I wish my sincerest thanks to the district administration for arranging this type of online classes. And I know if you follow these classes, you will be benefited. But in this situation, one thing we have to do, that is, we have to stay home and we have to stay safe. And it is the only situation that you should not go out from your home. You should remain in your home as much and as possible, and staying in your home, you must progress in your studies. So the tagline is stay home, stay safe. So that is the only solution, and that is the only thing you should do, and you should follow the advice of your parents, you should follow the advice of your seniors, and so that we all may come out of this difficult stage. Now you know, in this difficult stage, there are some terms which we previously were unaware of. But now we know these terms, meaning we are familiar, we now become very much familiar with these terms. One of these terms is lockdown. Now we know that we all know what is lockdown. We all know the meaning of lockdown. We all know what lockdown is. And lockdown is what? Lockdown is, it means complete shutdown. It means you should not come out of your house. You should not come out of your respective homes. You should remain inside and you should remain locked. That is why the lockdown phase is there. But unfortunately, what we are doing? We are unnecessarily coming out of our houses. We are unnecessarily going outside, and though the police officials, the government, all are actually warning you time and again that you should remain home, still we are not abiding by the rules. We are actually coming out of their houses, though we know that outside there is danger. But though we the human beings, we are not abiding by the rules, you know there are some creatures, there are some animals who actually know what is complete lockdown, and they always abide by the rule of lockdown. And this type of a creature is the snail. The snail is a creature who knows what is complete lockdown. Meaning what? Meaning, if the snail knows that danger is outside, this is the snail. This is the picture of a snail. You are very much aware of that picture, snail in Bengali, which you call samuk or googly. This is the snail, and this is the spiral sail of the snail. This is the tail or horn of the snail, which is called as tentacle. This is the muscular foot. And if the snail knows that danger is outside, if the snail knows that harm can happen to him, the snail will immediately shrink back to its own cell, to its own house. So look at the difference. We the human beings, we are proud that we are the best animal. We are proud that we know everything. We are proud that we are rational animal. But we are not abiding by the rules of lockdown. And look at the snail. Insignificant animal, unsophisticated animal. It is not like lion or tiger. Ferocious animal, strong animal. It is an insignificant animal, small creature. But the snail knows what is lockdown. Snail knows the tagline, stay home, stay safe. Snail knows that if it can stay inside its home, it can stay safely. Home means safety, security. But we the human beings, unfortunately, we are not abiding by the rules of lockdown. So I will urge all of you to follow the snail, because snail knows that if the harm is outside, if the danger is outside, you have to remain home. So from snail, you should learn this lesson. You should learn the tagline that stay home, stay safe. You should not unnecessarily come out of your houses. So this is the topic. Our topic is the snail. This is actually, open your book Bliss, page number 62, lesson 8, the Snail, and it is written by William Cowper. It is written by William Cowper. William Cowper is a pre-romantic poet. But before going into the heart of the poem, I will request all of you to please look at the poem. Just look at the poem. There are 4 stanzas, 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 stanzas. Each stanza contains 4 lines. First 3 lines are a bit big lines, and the last line is the last line is of only 1 or 2 words together, of weather, displeasure, whole pleasure. So last line is of 2 or 3 words, whereas the first 3 lines is called quatrain. 4 lines, it is called quatrain. So in every stanza there are 4 lines, there is a quatrain, there is 4 lines. Actually, William Cowper wrote 6 stanzas. 6 stanzas, but the editor of this book, editor of the Bliss, he actually included first 4 stanzas. He actually excluded the last 2 stanzas. So whatever is in your syllabus, that is actually the first 4 stanzas from the poem Snail. And look at the poem. I request you to only look at the poem, look at every stanza, look at every quatrain, first 3 lines and the last line. First 3 lines, they are a bit big line, whereas the last line, it is a small line. It is a small line, and those, every stanza is also just like a snail. Every stanza is just like a snail. First 3 lines of every stanza. First 3 lines of every stanza, it is what? The first 3 lines of every stanza, it is just like the spiral sail of the snail. And the last line, the small bit, the small last line, it is just like the tail of a snail or the horn of a snail. So every stanza also looks like a snail. Every stanza, it also looks like a snail. So it is also another fascinating thing that the poem actually constructed the poem in such a way, he wrote the lines in such a way that the very first glance, when you look at the poem, every stanza is more or less similar to a snail. First 3 lines means the big spiral snail, hard shell, hard shell of the snail, and the last line, it is just like the tail or the horn or the tentacle of the snail. So if you only look at the poem, every stanza will seem to you as one snail. So 4 stanzas, it means 1, 2, 3, 4 snails are there, as if 4 snails are there. Okay? So now, before going into the heart of the poem, let us discuss something, or let us talk about the poet William Cowper. William Cowper. And who is William Cowper? William Cowper is a famous pre-romantic poet. He is a poet who was born in 1731 and who died in 1800. So historically, 1731 to 1800. So obviously, historically, he belongs to the 18th century literary period. And 18th century literary period, it is marked by argument, it is marked by reason, it is marked by prose. But what happens, though he historically belongs to 18th century, stylistically, he does not belong to 18th century literary period. Stylistically, he resembles the romantic poets. Romantic poets means Wordsworth, Coleridge, Shelley, Byron, Keats. His style of writing, it is more or less similar to the romantic poets, and that is why he is called as a pre-romantic poet. So before the start of romanticism, romanticism started in 1798, publication of lyrical ballads. So before the start of romantic age, William Cowper, Robert Burns, William Goldsmith, William Collins, some poets are there who actually wrote in romantic style, and that is why they are known as pre-romantic poets, or that is why they are known as precursors of romanticism. So these group of poets, this school is specially known as pre-romantic poets or precursors of the romanticism. And what is the special feature of these poets? Special features of these poets are they actually all of these romantic poets and pre-romantic poets, they wrote about nature. And nature is the subject of their poem. Nature is the subject of their poem. Next, imagination. Imagination. Imagination is the creative force. Next, imagery. Imagery. Imagery is the medium. So these three prominent features are there. Nature. Nature is the subject matter of their poetry. Imagination is the creative force and imagery is the media. It means what? It means that they all wrote about the natural objects. They wrote about nature and natural objects. And obviously the snail. The snail is a natural object. The snail is an object of nature. And next, imagination. Imagination is the creative force. They have so much imagination that is actually the main creative force, Chalika Shakti of their poem and imagery. In their poem, you can find many imagery, many images. Images means word pictures, rupak. Many images are there. So through the imagery, through various images, they actually communicate their thoughts with the readers. So these three features you find in these poetry, in the poetry of the pre-romantic poets as well as the full-fledged romantic poets like Wordsworth, like Coleridge, like Keats, like Shelley and Byron. And Coleridge, the great romantic poet. The great romantic poet Coleridge, he actually said that William Cowper was one of the greatest modern poets. He dubs William Cowper as one of the greatest modern poet. So William Cowper, we have said that he is a famous pre-romantic poet. And another important thing, I have wrote it on the board, a famous quotation of William Cowper. And what is the quotation? All know, God made the country, man made the town. God made the country, the countryside, the rural side. The countryside is made by God and man made the town. The town is actually made by man. So the very term God made the country, it means his deep attraction for nature. It means his deep inclination for nature, for countryside. And he always wanted to write about the objects which we generally find in countryside. And no exception, the snail, you find the snail in countryside. You find the snail in marshy land. You find the snail in damp area, in some land where there is a bit water. So snail is an object which you generally find in the country, and he believed that God made the country and God made these type of small insignificant objects like the snail. So this is actually the background of the poem. Now we'll come to the main poem, main part of the poem, that is the text. You must have the text, page number 62 and lesson 8, the snail, and follow the poem. Follow the poem. And right at the beginning, you can find the theme of the poem. In every topic, the theme of the poem is described briefly right at the beginning. In a nutshell, it is described. And what is written, please follow. The poem takes us into the private world of a snail. The poem takes us into the private world of a snail, where it is seen to lead a self-sufficient life. Mentioned I have already, self-sufficient life. The poem takes us into the private world of a snail, where it is seen to lead a self-sufficient life. So I have pointed out the term self-sufficient. The snail leads a self-sufficient life. Next, we are allowed to observe, we are allowed to look into in minute detail the small yet self-contained world. Small yet self-contained world. So another term, self-contained. Small yet self-contained world. Small yet self-contained world. So self-contained world, the world of snail, it is very small. Snail, it is a very small creature, very insignificant creature, very small animal. So small yet self-contained world in which a snail lives. So this is the main focus of the poem. So what is the focus of the poem? The focus is obviously on the snail. The focus is obviously on the world of the snails, and obviously the world of the snail, it is very small. It is not a big world, it is not a large world, it is not at all a macrocosm meaning big world, it is a microcosm, small world. So microcosm of the snail, the poet focuses on the microcosm of the snail, the small world of the snail, and you can find that in the text. So now please come to the first stanza. What is the first stanza? I am reading out to you. To grass or lip or fruit or wall, the snail sticks close, nor fears to fall, as if he grew there, house and all together. To grass or lip or fruit or wall, the snail sticks close, nor fears to fall, as if he grew there, house and all together. So right at the beginning, the poet actually talks about the habitation of the snail, the residing place of the snail, where snail lives, and where snail lives, where you can generally find a snail. You can generally find a snail on a grass, you can generally find a snail on a lip, you can generally find a snail on a fruit, or you can generally find a snail on a wall. Look at the picture in your text and you can find a snail on leaf. So that is also the thing. So you can usually you can find a snail on a grass or on a leaf or on a fruit or on a wall. Next line, the snail sticks close. The snail sticks close. The snail, it sticks close. The snail sticks close, meaning the snail sticks into. The snail clings. The snail hangs. The snail sticks close as if there is a gum. The snail remains there. It is sticking there. The snail is sticking there. To grass or leaf or foot or wall, the snail sticks close. The snail closely sticks to a grass or to a leaf or to a fruit or to a wall. And next term, nor fears to fall. That is important. Nor fears to fall. And what is the meaning of the line? Sorry, nor fears to fall. It means that the snail has no fear. It is not at all afraid that it may fall down. If you have to climb a wall, you cannot climb a wall, but still with some support, if you can climb a wall, you will always have a fear within you. And what is the fear within you? You will always have a fear within you that you may fall down. But the snail, it is confident. The snail is totally confident that it will not fall down, and so there is no case of fear in his mind. He is totally mentally free. He knows that he will not fall down wherever it remain, wherever it be it a grass or on a leaf or on a fruit or on a wall. So wherever he remains, he will not fall down. So to grass or leaf or fruit or wall, the snail sticks close nor fears to fall, as if he grew there. As if he grew there, house and all together. As if he grew there. So the point is that the snail actually has grown there. The snail actually has grown there. So on the wall he grows, on the fruit he goes, on the leaf he goes, on the fruit, on the wall he goes, house and all together. Now another important term, there is a house. House. And what is the house of a snail? The house of a snail is that the house of a snail is the spiral cell or the hard shell of the snail. And it is also another thing, the house and the snail, they are inseparable. You cannot separate a house and a snail. Wherever the snail is, it will carry his house. And wherever the house of the snail is, the snail will always be there. So the snail and the house, you cannot separate these two things. And if you can separate these two things, it means that the snail is no more, the snail dies. So the house and the snail, they are always inseparable, and the poet actually wants to point out the fact that the snail and his house, they are always inseparable. You cannot separate the snail from its house, meaning it's a hard shell. Next stanza. Within that house secure he hides, when danger imminent betides, of storm or other harm besides of weather. Within the house where he hides. I already mentioned the term lockdown. I already mentioned the tagline, stay home, stay safe. The tagline of the government. So that is the thing, within that house, security hides. If we arrange the line, what will happen? Within that house security hides, meaning he hides securely within that house. House, what does house mean? House does not mean four walls. House does not mean a roof. House means much more. House means a shelter. House means safety. House means security. And that is why the government is always urging you, stay home, stay safe. You must remain within your house. You must remain within your home. So within that house, security hides. The snail securely or safely remains within his house. And that is the special power of the snail, which we already mentioned in the introductory part, that we the human beings, we are not paying any heed to the address of the government, where the government is saying that you must stay home, you will remain safe. But look at the snail. Snail is an insignificant animal, a small animal, but the snail knows that his house is his safety. If he remains within his house, he will remain safe. So that is the difference. And once again it is said, within that house security hides. He hides securely within his house. Next line, I already told in the introductory part, when danger imminent betides. Imminent meaning upcoming. Imminent meaning impending. Imminent meaning which is about to happen. Imminent meaning which is coming soon. And betides meaning happens. So when danger imminent betides, when some impending danger happens. When some impending danger happens. So if the snail knows that, or if the snail feels that danger is happening, what will snail do? Immediately it will shrink into his house. Immediately it will remain within his house. Immediately it will actually contract himself within his house. So that is the difference. And what danger may come? Next line it is told, of storm. Of storm. Danger may come in the form of storm, or danger may come in the form of tempest, huge storm, or other harm besides. Or danger may come in the form of harm. Harm means harm from other strong animals, harm from outside. Harm means harm from weather. So of storm or other harm besides of weather. So if the snail thinks that danger may happen to him, what will the snail do? The snail will immediately coil itself. The snail will immediately sink itself into his own house. But previously I have to look at us, judge us, we the human beings. We know that if we go outside in this dangerous situation, COVID-19 virus is there outside. The government is saying time and again, don't go outside. We are going out. So knowing that danger is outside, we are going outside our home. But look at the snail. It may be an insignificant object. It may be a small object. But if he feels that danger is outside, it will immediately shrink or coil itself into his home. Next line, next stanza actually, next stanza. Third stanza. Give but his horns the slightest touch. His self-collecting power is such, he shrinks into his house with much displeasure. Give but his horns the slightest touch. I already mentioned horns. These are actually horns of the snail. These are actually the horns of the snail, or the tentacles of the snail. In science it is called tentacle. In general term we call it horn or tail of a snail. But in science it is called actually as the tentacles or the antenna of the snail. And another interesting thing is that on the tip of these tentacles, on the tip of these horns, there remains the eyes of the snail. So snail, it can also see like us. And the tip, on the tip of the tentacles, there remains the eyes of the snail. So what the poet says, give but his horns the slightest touch. If you just touch a snail a bit, just if you give a slight touch to a snail, if you give a big touch to a snail, what will happen? His self-collecting power is such. Important term, self-collecting power. Self-satisfied, self-sufficient, self-protection, self-contained world, and now self-collecting power. Self-collecting power. His self-collecting power is such, he shrinks into his house with much displeasure. So what is the lines mean? If you touch the horns or the tentacles of the snail slightly, immediately the snail will shrink into his house. In the previous stanza it is told that if the snail feels that danger is outside, it will shrink, it will coil itself into his house. And now in this stanza it is told, if you give a slight touch, a big touch to his horn, what will happen? The snail will shrink into his house, and his self-collecting power is such. Self-collecting power, and it is a great power. Self-collecting power, it is not easy to have the self-collecting power. It means that in the outside world, you may have pleasure. In the outside world, you may have enjoyment, but you should know the proper timing when you can withdraw from that. So self-collecting, self-withdrawal power. Self-withdrawal power. So the danger is outside. If you give the slight touch on the horns of a snail, it can immediately withdraw. And withdrawal, timely withdrawal, it is not at all easy. But the snail has the power. It has the power to withdraw from its life, to withdraw from the enjoyment outside, and right at the perfect time, it actually performs that task. He shrinks into his house with much displeasure. So, and now the term is there, displeasure, obviously, because as the snail is withdrawing itself, as the snail is withdrawing himself into the coil, into the hard shell, so what happens? He feels a bit displeasure, meaning he knows that in the world outside there is enjoyment, there is pleasure, but though he knows that there is no pleasure when he remains within, but still he has no option. He has to shrink back into his own house. So there you may find some similarity with the human beings. When the officials, when the police are actually urging us, go to your home, they are actually driving us to our home, we are actually withdrawing to our home, but with much displeasure, just like the snail. Snail is also with much displeasure, it shrinks into his house. Now the last stanza of the text, I have said that there are two more stanzas, but the editor of this book, he actually excluded the last two stanzas, so that is why 4 stanzas are there in your syllabus. So the last stanza of the text, wherever he dwells alone, except himself has chattels none, well satisfied to be his own whole treasure. Wherever he dwells alone. Look at the tragedy of the sun. Look at the tragedy. Wherever he dwells alone. We all actually like to be with company. We all actually like friends. We all actually want to remain with our family members, with our fellow companions. But look at the snail. Unfortunate thing, he has no option, but he has to do it alone. Though in this situation, we are actually all maintaining safe distance. We are actually keeping distance from our friends and relatives. But still, it is a fact that we all love to remain with our family members, fellow companions, the persons whom I like, with our friends. But look at the tragedy of the snail. Wherever he dwells alone. Wherever he dwells alone. So the loneliness of the snail is actually pointed out by the author. The snail is very much lonely. The snail has no companion inside his house. Yes, obviously. Outside his house there are many snails. But I am talking about inside his house. Inside his house he has no companion. In our house, in our home, there are family members. There are 4 family members or 5 family members. But inside the house of a snail, there is one snail and only one snail. So this is the unfortunate tragedy of the snail, that he has to live a lonely existence. He remains alone within his own house. Even if he wants, even if he intends, the snail has no option. He cannot take anyone. He must remain alone within his house. Wherever he dwells alone. Except himself has chattels none. Another unfamiliar term, chattels. I am coming to the term. Except himself has chattels none. Chattels means personal property, personal belongings. Except himself has chattels none. So in the first line, it is mentioned that in his residence he can accommodate none. Wherever he dwells alone. Suppose in our family, there are 4 family members, 5 family members, or 3 family members, or 2 family members. A guest comes from outside, what we do? We accommodate the guest for 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, a month, etc. We have that option. We can accommodate a guest. But if a guest comes to a snail, if a guest asks a snail, please accommodate me for 5 minutes, the snail cannot do. The snail cannot do. The snail has to remain alone in this house. And in the second line, what the poet says, except himself has chattels none. Meaning he cannot take any personal belonging with himself. He cannot take any personal belonging within his house. Another unfortunate thing. He cannot take any companion within his house. And secondly, he cannot take any personal belonging within his house. Suppose I am going to his house, on the way I am actually coming across a shop where TV is sold, and I entered into the shop. I preferred a good wall TV, a large wall TV. I am giving some money to the shopkeeper, and I actually bring the TV with myself, and I actually bring the TV within my house. But snail cannot do it. Snail cannot take any personal belonging. Snail cannot accommodate any personal belonging with himself. So this is the tragedy of the snail. The snail cannot take any of his companions or friends within his house. And number 2, the snail cannot take any of his personal possessions, any of his personal belongings within his house. Wherever he dwells alone, except himself has settled down. So the snail is without comment. We can feel for the snail. We can feel for the snail. And look at the snail. His existence is very lonely existence. He cannot accommodate anyone. There is one snail, and within the house there must remain one snail, just like the sun. There is one sun, and there is only one sun. The sun has no company. The sun is the greatest power. The sun gives us light, scorching heat. Light is there, but there is one sun, only one sun. The sun has no company. Similar thing, the snail. Yes, outside his house, there may be many snails companions, but the snail cannot accommodate anybody within his house. Next line. Well satisfied to be his own whole treasure. Well satisfied, pointed out, self-satisfied. This is the special power. This is the special power. Though the snail knows his tragedy, though the snail knows that inside his house he cannot accommodate anyone, though the snail knows that inside his house he cannot take any personal property, still the snail remains well satisfied. He has no option, but he has to remain satisfied. And that is the lesson we should learn from the snail. That we cannot be all happy. We cannot become 100% happy in our life. There must remain some unhappiness, but still we must remain satisfied. We must remain satisfied, and we should learn this lesson from the snail. The snail, it may be an inferior creature. It may be an insignificant creature. The snail, it may be a small animal, but still the snail, it is well satisfied, it is self-satisfied. And we should learn that lesson from the snail. And what is the lesson? The lesson is that we should always remain self-contented. We should always remain self-satisfied. We should always remain self-sufficient. And another time we mentioned self-protection. The snail knows the self-protection. And I have told, time and again I have told in the introductory part, in the middle of the poem, we the human beings sometimes we forget self-protection. We know that danger may come when we go outside. We know we must wear mask. Now when we go outside, we know we should use hand rub, but we are not at all taking self-protection. But the snail knows how to take self-protection. So another important feature of the snail is self-protection. So self-satisfied, self-sufficient, self-protection. So wherever he dwells alone, except himself has chattels none, well satisfied to be his own whole treasure. The snail always remains well satisfied. So we also remain satisfied. Yes, sometimes a phase comes in our life when we may be alone, when we may be unhappy, but still we should remain satisfied. And this is a special feature of the snail, that the snail remains well satisfied. And it is his whole treasure. It is his treasure. It is his treasure. It cannot take any treasure within his house. It cannot take any ornaments within his house. And it is his treasure to dwell alone and to remain alone. It is his whole treasure. He becomes well satisfied. He becomes self-satisfied, and that is his whole treasure. And the snail, it may be a sluggish creature. The snail, it may be a slow creature. The speed of the snail, it is very low speed. The snail cannot move very speedily, very swiftly. But snail is slow. But the snail may be slow, but it is steady. Even if it remains on the wall, it remains steady. It has no fear to fall. It remains always steady. Even if it remains on the left, even if it remains on the grass, it always remains steady. So it may be slow, it may be a small animal, it may be an insignificant animal, it may be a slow animal, it may be a sluggish animal. But one thing you must appreciate, wherever it be, it is steady. And you know the bottom line. Slow but steady wins the race. And snail, it may be the slow object, but it is steady, and so it has all the feature to win ultimately the race. And this is what we find in the poem. And look at how very interesting, very beautifully William Cowper, he actually mentions all the things. The habitation of the snail, the residing place of the snail, what is the reaction of the snail when he feels about any danger, what is the reaction of the snail when you give a big touch on his horn, on his tentacle, whatever the reaction of the snail when he dwells alone. The poet mentions everything. So the poet not only mentions the snail externally, the poet also mentions what can the snail think. The poet nestles into the brain of the snail, and the poet also actually pointing out to us, to the readers, that what the snail thinks. And the snail thinks of his loneliness. Snail thinks that he cannot take anyone, any companion, any property with himself, but still the snail remains well satisfied. So this is the lesson which you should learn from the snail. I hope that you will actually go through the text time and again, and if you go to the text and if you follow my sayings, you can easily understand the text. And after the text, there are some activity works are there, and these are very easy. If we go through the poem, the first, there are some multiple choice questions. With the slightest touch, the snail shrinks into his house with 4 options: displeasure, pleasure, pain, surprise. And what will be answer? Displeasure. With the slightest touch, the snail shrinks into his house with displeasure. Second question, MCQ question. In its house, the snail lives with parents, friends, relatives, no one. In his house, no parents, no friends, no relatives, so answer no one. In his house, there is no one. Next, true-false question. 2A, the snail fears to fall from the wall. Obviously false. The snail does not fear to fall from the wall. Supporting statement is there. The snail sticks close, nor fears to fall. Next question, the snail comes out of his house during a storm. We know false. The snail cannot come out of his house. The snail shrinks into his house, so obviously false. Supporting statement, within that house secure, he hides when danger imminent, betides of storm. And now 2 SAQ questions, short answer type questions are there. What does the snail usually stick itself to? What does the snail actually remains? Right at the very first line, the answer is there. The snail usually sticks to grass or leaf or fruit or wall. And next question, what makes the snail well satisfied? I have told, to dwell alone and to be his own whole treasure makes the snail well satisfied. So these textual questions are there. Now there are 4 grammatical questions. First question, Siraj always rises early. You have to make the sentence interrogative by using does. So what will be the answer? Does Siraj always rise early? Next question, Joyce is the best singer in the class. You have to frame a question using who. What will be the answer? Who is the best singer in the class? Answer is Joyce is the best singer in the class. 4C, he saw the rainbow. You have to frame a question using did. What will be the answer? Did he see the rainbow? And the next question, last question, I go to school by bus. you have to frame a question using how. What will be the question? How do you go to school? You can make the sentence like how do I go to school, but how do you go to school? It will be better because the answer will come, I go to school by bus. So the answer will be how do you go to school. So these textual questions and grammatical questions are there, and I will also provide you the answers. And in the at the end of the video you can see the answers. And finally there is a writing activity, and it is very important for your exam. Letter to an editor. And what is the activity? Write a letter within 100 words to the editor of an English daily about the disturbances caused by the thoughtless use of loudspeaker. So you know the thoughtless use of loudspeaker and microphones, and for the thoughtless uses of loudspeaker and microphones, what problems we may face. And so you should write a letter. You know the format, how you should start a letter, and how you should continue the letter. And I hope that when this lockdown phase, when this interim period will be over, when you will go to your schools, and you must write this letter and you must check this letter to your respective teachers. The teachers will point out if there is some problem in your writing, and I hope that the videos which will be shown, you must follow those videos, you will be benefited. And I want to thank the district administration, the Samagro Shiksha Abhijan, the officials who have arranged such type of program, and this program will be helpful to the students. If you go through the video, if you follow the video, you will be benefited. So once again I will urge that follow the Snail. Remember the tagline, stay home, stay safe. The snail knows that if he stays within his home, it is safe. You should also know that if you stay within your home, you should stay safely, and so remain in your home. You should make progress in your studies. You should follow the videos. You should read out the text. You should write the questions and answer, and in this way you should follow the episodes in ABP Anando or 24 Ghanta or whatever the government is showing the activities, the classroom lessons. You should also follow those, staying in your home, and you must, I am confident, you must make progress in your studies if you follow all those things. So thank you, and when the school will open, the home task is there, writing activity, question number 5, you must write the letter to the editor and you must check it with your respective teacher, and he will point out the loopholes. Thank you.